your host Faheem today. I want to start off by thanking God for giving me this opportunity to be joined by Dr Amir and Shazli. And I'm going to get right into this. Dr Amir, we hear medicine is stressful and being a doctor is really, it comes with its territory. What's it actually like being a doctor on a daily basis?
Bismillah. In the name of God. I think that's quite a loaded question, and I think every physician has their own take on it. But I think you have to go back to the initial reason why, the why part of why you wanted to be a doctor, or what drove you to follow into medicine, or what was it that encouraged your soul to follow that pathway. And I think if you constantly use that as the narrative, then all of that stress, all of that hardship, all of that heartbreak kind of gets swayed to one side. Like you can look at a grey cloud in the sky and panic, or look at a grey cloud in a really big blue sky and say, sorry, it's a little grey cloud. And so it is a very stressful, very demanding lifestyle, and it does have a lot of difficulty and a lot of stresses involved. But I think more importantly in that is, why are you there in the first place? And if you have a strong why, a spiritual, emotional, heartfelt why, it doesn't matter anymore. It's always going to be okay.
That is absolutely mind-blowing, because I think that would have been easy to answer by saying, yeah, it's stressful, it's difficult, but I think the why is really, really important with anything you do. And it just, that's, in anything you do, I think I've learnt the same thing, is why do you get up and do what you do? Why do you go to work? Why is it you decided to do X, Y, Z? Now, I want to just bring in Shazli here. And Shaz, tell me, why did you go into pharmacy, in the sense that majority of your siblings are all doctors? So how did this happen?
Well, I was doing electrical and electronic engineering first. I got sponsored by a company and I had to go to work for a year. I was sponsored by them. After a couple of months I realised it wasn't for me. They were involved in making weapons, so there was an ethical issue there, so I left and then went through clearing and then got into pharmacy. So yeah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Now, Dr Amir, you don't look like somebody I would say who's a doctor, and that's not meant to be offensive in any way. When I met you literally about a week ago, I had honestly thought, I'm going to ask Shazli, what's his GMC registration number, because this is not a doctor. Tell me about, about yourself. Like, you're obviously, you obviously look after your health, which is, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing, it's important. We spoke about martial arts. And I'm a fan of, boxing. I think it's an absolute wonderful sport, as much as it's, a physical sport, but there's a science behind it. Yes, you're a doctor, alhamdulillah, you're gifted with, with the knowledge. But what about this wrestling? Where did this all come from?
So my family, so my father's from the northern hemisphere of Iran, but it's an old place called Azerbaijan, so it's like what we call Iranian Azaris. And they are like mountainous folk. My mother is a pure Iranian, but all of her family, all of her brothers were very high level wrestlers. My father wrestled for donkey's years. He came to the UK, wrestled for Great Britain, wrestled in some really high level tournaments. And so I'm probably third, maybe fourth generation wrestler from my dad, probably second or third generation from my mum, as in from her male lineage. And so wrestling was part of our culture, part of our lifestyle. It's like, people play football on a Sunday, maybe they know how to kick the ball around, so we knew how to wrestle from a young age. But more than that, it was something that it became quite intrinsic to us. All of my brothers, we loved training, we loved sports, wrestling. We'd done, every single one of us, done a martial arts. So every single one of us have got 1 or 2 or 3 black belts in different martial arts. So I've got a black belt in Taekwondo, the Chinese Jiu-Jitsu. I did the wrestling. My older brother is a back session, so I'm playing Mantis and showing my other brothers and Koksu One. There's loads of the purest of us only was my younger brother Moston. He wrestled really, really well at national level. But generally we just love sports, and I think coming onto that developed us and gave us a chance to be careful of how we lived, how we ate, where do we go. We were constantly competing. So even though we didn't grow up having much in regards to a principle ideological way of living, the sports encouraged healthy living. So we didn't smoke, we didn't drink, we hardly went out. We didn't, engage in any activities that were, would have been deemed immoral or unethical, or would have taken away that, if you want, that premise in martial arts, or the martial art code of chivalry, honor, integrity, perseverance, indomitable spirit. Those are part and parcel of how we was raised in terms of martial sciences, and it goes with wrestling, or what we call kushti, traditional wrestling. So then that obviously, but at the same time we were very academic. We love reading, love studying, we love sciences. So we love to fight, but we love to study. And so every single one of us got in some academics, and I fell in love with the idea of saving lives at a very young age. And that kind of promoted me to do medicine. And that was firstly ingrained by my mother, who would tell me loads of sad stories about people passing away without having medical health care back home with her and family members. And after, I think I read a verse in the Holy Quran, which stipulated that if you were to save one life, it's to save the whole of mankind. And already at a young age, I already had this kind of Superman complex. I could save everyone if I become a doctor. And then all of a sudden you're being told, if you do just save one life, you save the whole of mankind. It's like, oh my God, I can actually save everyone. So from a young age, just develop that kind of narrative, and then, you think that's, and obviously, but at the same time, I love sports, I love combat, I love wrestling, but it never took away from the tarbiyah, from the etiquettes and the manners and the way that you carry yourself, the good, wholesome character, the dignity, the honor, the chivalry, the having humility, walking on the earth lightly. When people speak ill, you speak kind back, that kind of stuff. So, obviously that we, all of those things were entwined and was like a finely woven tapestry was put into our lifestyle from an early age. And then obviously we just loved studying. I'd wake up at like 6 in the morning to watch Open University when I was about 9 years old, because I was fascinated.
What, Open University?
Yeah, they had to use 6, I think 5 or 6 in the morning. We used to watch it before we used to go to school. It was fun because it was, what I found with them, because they taught, because they loved to teach. And from a young age, I realised I clung on to people who weren't didactic, who would explain things because it came from their heart. And so Open University, even though it would have been like some random stuff about, stars or planets or what have you, it was something from that person's heart. And I can remember thinking, this is really interesting. And I still love watching it. Me and Boris used to sit there, watch it, have our cornflakes with water. There was no milk. So, and then going to secondary school. But so obviously when I got to med school, again, just like you said, no one could believe I was at med school, and even some of the guys in my year were from the rough sides of West London, wherever that may be. And when I used to speak, I had a little bit of an East London accent, and I wasn't inappropriate with my speech. I wouldn't use, I wouldn't be vulgar, but I just had this kind of way of speaking, like, yeah, right, mate, yeah, wicked, man. And they'd be like, I remember one of them saying, because I was living in on campus site in Notting Hill Gate, and one of them said, because they saw me cleaning a lot. I was always cleaning the stairs and the hallways and stuff. One of them goes, what is that, the caretaker? Like, yeah, I'm the caretaker.
So
I'm take care of you.
So this, what I'm finding is that the martial arts has had an impact in the way you actually practice your art in medicine, in the sense that we can link it back to bedside manner. Is there some link, do you feel, that the medicine has taught you a bit about bedside manner? And it's an art apparently that I see, your take on this, but would you say that the bedside manner is not what it used to be now, or has started to kind of disappear?
I mean, obviously I don't work too much when I say bedside manner, talking about interactions with people per se. I think it starts very early on with something much more powerful than martial arts or any of the like thereof. It's the interaction you have with your mum and your dad. And if there is love and hope and mercy there, it impacts you, man, like crazy.
Shazli, we have a pharmacist, we have a doctor. It's a multidisciplinary team. How did you meet Dr Amir? What's your story?
I remember having a conversation with Dr Amir a while ago, because I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we had a long phone conversation once because he was teaching my younger sister Safia at the time. And
So what was he teaching at the time?
I think she was in her 5.
So Dr. Amir was teaching her medicine?
Yes, that's
okay.
right, yeah. And then, then I decided to do, if you fast forward maybe 10 years or so, and then I wanted to do my independent prescribing course, and then my sister put me in touch with Dr. Amir again, and he agreed. He was my DMP, designated medical practitioner, and every week we used to come and sit in the surgery along with my colleague Shamus from Birmingham, and then we realised both liked BJJ, and then just developed from there, week in, week out, and then we just, he invited me to come to train at Legion, and that's what I've been trying to do. Not as regular as I hope, because I'm just getting a bit old now, but.
And what did you learn from that experience? So you're sat there with Dr. Amir, who's doing his consultations, and you as a pharmacist, it's the way we have our learning is totally different to the way med school is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's some similarities, but the direction that we eventually take is very different to medics. Because my experience was when I was sat down with, and I was blessed to be at Montgomery House, which is a surgery in Bicester, and I was privileged by Dr. Franklin for giving me the opportunity to learn. And I was just fascinated by the whole concept on how you have an individual who has a short space of time and has to help this patient, and the whole science behind it. It just made me just think that there's so much to learn, and it's just a wonderful art. How did you feel about the whole concept of being sat there as a pharmacist and possibly making a diagnosis? Did you feel, was it all overwhelming for you? What were your thoughts?
Initially it was, because you have a patient, and again you've only got 10 minutes to decide what is wrong. And it is, like you said, an art form. It's not simply science. The way that, Dr. Amir will just hone in on the relevant details within that 10-minute slot and make a diagnosis. That was really awesome. Yeah, and at the same time it was overwhelming, because you're thinking to yourself, how can I exclude all those red flags, and how can I actually reach a diagnosis? So yeah, it was an awesome experience, but again, at the same time, it was overwhelming when I realised the amount of work that would need to be done to get to that level.
Dr. Amir, so I get asked this question all the time, and it's about how do you become good at this? And Shazli's kindly touched on it as well, that it's all overwhelming. As a doctor, how do you become good at making a clinical diagnosis? Where do you start? Because medicine is so broad, and yes, you could say we'll go back and go into med school, but we had a discussion on this, and you had an interesting opinion on physician associates, nursing associates, pharmacists learning to prescribe. I've had one school of thought, well, if you really want to prescribe, you should go be a doctor. Why are you doing prescribing if you're not a doctor? Your school of thought was different. So do you in any way feel, is it safe for whether it's different other healthcare professionals to prescribe, first of all? And secondly, what advice would you give them to become good at this, if you felt that it is definitely a route that one should consider?
I think it's interesting, because that question, you have to go back to the basics again, and we've made a mention of this before, and I'll be happy to mention it again. Who gives the right for anyone to do anything? What legislation has to be placed over someone in what respect? So if you look at the martial arts and the code of conduct in martial arts, who was the first? I have a very close friend called Khalid Ismail. He's a very amazing fighter and is an amazing person. And he said to me once, he goes, well, who was the first black belt in, say, a martial art, and what gave him the right to give the other guy a black belt? And what was it? Is it a lineage of family? Was it because you used to go around and beating people up because you could win tournaments? So I take the same view. Who gave you the right to say you can and can't? I understand there has to be checks and balances. There has to be procedures put in place, policies, and make sure you're following a certain guidance. And that's what I love about our style of medicine in the UK, because we're very clinically governed. We're very much into like clinical governance, guidelines, nice applications, constantly trying to have people reflect and review. But to tell someone you can't do it, but why can't I do it? Explain to me, what is it that I can't? Is it because I didn't get that A at my chemistry and I just missed it by a point and got a B instead in A-levels? Is it because maybe I misread the question in my pre-clinical exam and I failed it? When if I just spent a few more seconds and I didn't realise at the time I was dyslexic, maybe I could have got some support at that time. So what gives someone the right to say no you can't or yes you can? Now obviously with that in mind, I think more important than all of that is having the right character. If you award someone a black belt, let's go to martial arts again, or if you teach someone a technique, you are accountable for that person's usage of that technique. And so we have to be very careful when people come to us to learn how to wrestle, how to fight, any of the above. I, as their ustad, their coach, their leader, their mentor, if I were to tell them how to say submit somebody, put someone in a joint lock, or worse still, were to teach someone a rear naked choke, which obviously these are sinister moves used specifically in sport environments like competitions. But they then were to go along and apply that irresponsibly, without the right guidance, and evoking transgression by using that upon someone who doesn't know what they're doing because they want to be authoritative and they want to basically oppress people because they can fight and the others can't, then I'm accountable as their teacher. So it's the same thing. So you have to make sure that the person you're training their, if you want, their inner self. You know, they talk about the inner self, the inner consultation and the models thereof. And you're making sure that person, their heart being a good vessel, you're trying to invoke goodness from them. So if the person has got a good character, has a good soul, and you can see they're trying, then by all means I would love them to become physician. I have a young gentleman at my club. He's a young English boy called Alfie, and he's hopefully wants to do medicine. His manners are impeccable. And I pray to God he becomes a doctor, because we need people like that, who are very reflective, who are very heartfelt, who have, you know, they want to accept everyone around them and do what they can to support people, you know. And I think yes, you have to be wise, you have to be emotionally intelligent as a physician, but one of the most important aspects is your character, you know. And I think Carl Rogers put in his, I think it's Rogers or Neighbours, one of the two, I can't recall. You know, he had this expression I used to say all the time to the guys I used to train: unconditional positive regard. That's like a 101 narrative that you have to follow. Someone comes to you, you have to be unconditional. So you can't say, what do you want, what is it, you're wasting my time. And positive regard, even if they've hurled the worst abuse to you, you hold your breath and you say, how can I help you? And I had that situation happen in A&E once. Unfortunately, a lady who was, I think she was from maybe Eastern European area, she was really stressing out, she was really struggling. I just finished my shift, I've just changed my stuff. I mean, any of the guys in medicine, and you know, even Shoaib will mention as well, you're just about to leave, you're tired, and then she's literally stopped in front of me and said, when am I going to get seen? And I said, I'm really sorry, I've just finished, I don't know. And I won't repeat what she said, but she used some very abusive language. And this, you know, in this day and age, we can turn around and say zero tolerance to leave the department. Yeah. And at the time, the manager of A&E was there. He's a really nice Caribbean gentleman who said he literally was about to pounce on her. He goes, how dare, and I stopped him. I said, wait, took a deep breath, and I said, what's happened? Why are you upset for? And she started crying. She goes, my son is really sick. No one cares about us. I know we're not in, you know, the whole foreigner narrative. And I said, one moment, let me go and check the table. Checked, a little bit late, more to go, but it was the only child. I said, spoke to one of the GPs who work in the A&E department. I said, look, do you mind just quickly seeing this one? Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, and at the end of it, there was no, oh, thank you, doctor. No, she just said, right, I've got my rights, I'm off now. But you see, that's the way
unconditional.
Unconditional, right? You didn't expect, oh, thank you. Someone let you know, you flashed someone to pass you. They didn't flash me back. Why didn't put the hazards on for me? Why did they do that? You know, and I think that is important. So there's loads of things. It goes back to your inner self, and if you can have the right inner self, anything you can do and everything you can do, you'd want people to be the leaders of any country if they're like that. So I think it's the same thing. It goes back to that person's soul, their intention, and remember we said about the why.
Yeah.
So if all of that's okay, my brother, you can teach anyone to be a physician. If that's in place, it's not a problem, man. Everything's easy.
So, mentoring, so having a teacher is important.
Absolutely.
You mentioned about reflecting on your practice,
Yeah.
also important. You mentioned about character, which we've touched on, about bedside manner and so forth, and leadership. And I think all of these four are important skill sets and tools, irrespective of whatever you do, whether it's a business, whether it's your religion,
children,
or your children,
your wife, your family,
your wife, your
mother,
family.
your father.
That I think all these are extremely important. You know, mentoring isn't just for, you know, as a DMP or just for medicine. It's for anything. Whether you're, you know, you look at Muhammad Ali, you look at all these great boxers and all these sports, you know, and you see that it's really important to have a great teacher. And something that really struck when I spoke with you a week or so ago was your passion for teaching and the energy that you display. And I saw like I wouldn't say like a mirror of myself, but I saw something that really sparked me. And I love teaching. I think probably more than teaching, I love to learn, because I think once you start to feel that, you know, you start to lose that energy or lose that mindset that, you know, that I need to learn things, you know, you may not be open to certain ideas. So I love teaching. I just feel that it's just mind-blowing to be able to help someone, whether it's just a single verse of a Quran, or whether it's a single, you know, explaining to someone why you make this diagnosis or be careful with these symptoms. What do you feel and is important when you're trying to teach someone this art of medicine? You know, if we touch on the science now, you know, how important is it to make sure that you have a good understanding of your science? Before we go into the art, how important is it to make sure you do have a sound understanding of your science when you're practicing medicine?
So I think the most important part of that equation is reflecting sincerely and not paying lip service to it. So what I touched on it with you when I spoke last.
Yep.
There's this acronym called puns and dens, and I teach that quite a bit. Straight after I teach about, you know, on positive regard, I said, look, you guys have to constantly remember that you can't know everything, and even if you knew something, you might have forgotten it. So it's time that you have to have a log of these patient unmet needs, and in turn these doctors' educational needs. So as a consequence, you're constantly badgering at yourself to reflect on those topics that have come up that you struggled with, because it's very easy to say, I don't know that, I'm going to send it to the other specialist. So I remember doing surgery, and I think with Shoaib as well, he'll probably mention it as well, that there is people you work with, consultants, especially, I don't want to have a go at surgeons, but you find it sometimes with surgeons per se, not the newer ones, but the few generations ago, they'll say, this is not a medical problem, call the medics. And you'd go, but we're doctors. No, we're surgeons. Oh, okay, I can definitely manage this. And so, no, call the medical reg. And I'll call the medical reg, and I'll say, Professor so-and-so. He goes, oh, yeah, fine, I'll come. He wouldn't even ask the question, I'll just come and look at it. And he'd say on the ward round, he'd say, we're not renal physicians, we're not dermatologists, we're not neurologists, we're not this, we're not that. We are surgeons. And by the way, we only do GI surgery. And I was like, yeah, that's really a polarised way of looking at things. And I did thought, what happens to that agendas for you? You specialise, you have a specialty, and then you have this kind of like overall general understanding of things around you. And when you kind of get stuck, you can either say, right, someone else do it, say, actually, I don't understand that. I'm going to go study it and see if I can understand it. Because I'm going to meet a patient like that again. And that's life experience, right? And then you can actually aid that patient through that difficulty. Maybe you can't solve the problem, but you can say, yeah, you've got this, it's probably this, and they're kind of, they're reassured in your understanding of the topic, rather than if you just say, I don't know what that is. You know, there's no harm flipping through a book or going on Google and say, what do you reckon of that? But to kind of say to them, well, actually, I think you've got this. And they say, wow, how do you know? And they think, you know, you're just a GP, what do you know? And you're someone who wants to evolve constantly. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's this kind of paradigm where you're escalating from a lower, it's a pyramid. So every time you grow in that pyramid, the pinnacle of that pyramid is self-actuation. So to become the one, or to constantly self-actuate, be better than you was. And the way to ascend that ladder, which is interesting, I'm talking about 60s, 50s here, man. you had these physiological things that had to be put in place. Make sure you're somewhere safe. You're not going to be shot at. You're not in the middle of the ocean going to be eaten by the sharks. There's air to breathe. Make sure you've got somewhere safe and warm to live, water to drink and food to eat. Now listen to the next part of the next part of the pyramid. You have to be loved, and you have to love other people. And then, isn't that amazing? It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yeah? You can have a look, it's an amazing pyramid, yeah? And the next bit is self-actualization, so you get better. So you can't grow, you got the food, you got the water, you got something, but if people don't love you, you don't love people, you're not going to get to that top of that pyramid. And so it goes back to the heart, goes back to the soul, goes back to the inner self, right? So these things, once you fix all of those things, then reflecting is easy. You never feel like you know everything. Your cup's never full. You're always saying, I don't know anything and I want to learn more. You're always reflective. You're a reflective person. And you aspire to want to be better than you was. And you're constantly in awe of everything around you because there is this magical thing that's happening called life, and you want to preserve it. And you understand that that is the narrative of God, if I may bring that in, by saying that He wants us, you know, to take care of that beautiful sacrosanct thing, life.
I think that's absolutely spot on, because reflection is important, and I learned that through my practice, because I remember my first case on a patient who presented with what now I call bilateral swelling of the tonsils and so forth. At that time it was just a sore throat. And I soon realised that there's so much to learn. And I remember it is absolute an ocean. And I remember going back to Dr Akib, who is for you, like Dr Amir is for you, Shazi, for me it's Dr Akib, and I said, Baijan, elder brother, that how do I become good at this? Because I've done my non-medical prescribing. I thought that after the prescribing I will know everything, and it's all fallen apart. And what he mentioned was, first, humble yourself and accept that you don't know everything. Secondly, be prepared to work hard and reflect on your practice. Write it down and start to read. You can pick up a book on pathology, start reading anatomy, start reading physiology, you'll get better at this. And at that point, I thought that's all I need to do. So I started to read pathology, histology, cytology. He used to take me to dissection. I started dissecting the human body and started to, so I can put that anatomy into practice. And then there came a point where I felt, I've got this, I know everything. And I remember this patient presented with, at that time, what I thought was quinsy, because what Dr. Akib explained to me is make sure whenever the uvula deviates, it's most likely quinsy. And I never realised that when you say the word the uvula moves anyway. And I remember calling him up, telling him, Bhajan, this is my first case of quinsy. He goes, explain to me, why do you think it's quinsy? I said, look, when she goes her uvula moves, she's got tonsillitis. And he goes, no, that's not quinsy. That is literally physiological, her uvula moving. And what I realised was that you can't be experienced. You can read all the books you want. You can look at different anatomy, pathology, histology, read it day and night. But the reality is that God has made us as individuals. Our genetics, our biology, our minds, the way we function is totally different. So, just to end on this point, how do you gain that experience? If you were to sum it up within a couple of sentences, how do you essentially make a diagnosis? Where do you get that experience from? How does it work? Is it books, or is it just a case you just have to do it?
I think it's a combination of knowledge that you acquire and application of knowledge. So you've basically got to get into the meat of it. And sometimes you've got to run into deep water, and that's when you've got to ask for help. And that's when that tutelage comes back again. That Jedi Padawan relationship. You have a teacher, a mentor who guides you and protects you and gives you that scope of guidance. And that's why I think mentorship long term, it shouldn't be, oh, we're going to do a 1-year course, sign you off, you're done. No, it should be long term, lifetime mentorship. And what I believe is that the student, the teacher, so the teacher will bring the student up to his level, then the student starts pulling the teacher back up, and then they keep on doing this, they keep on buzzing off each other until eventually it's constant self-actuation every day.
Wow. Shazli, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just a nice quote that I remembered. I think it's attributed to Mark Twain, and he said, "I never let my schooling interfere with my education." So we're always learning.
Fantastic. Thank you. Again, thank you to Shazzy and Dr. Amir for being here. And, again, I think just to wrap this up, that reflection, mentoring, and constantly learning are really, really important ingredients in anything that you want to do in life. Because, wealth, I feel, is measured by the amount of knowledge and how much you can learn, whereas money is not a measure of wealth. So thank you both for your time, and may God give us the ability to continue to learn and go out and help others.